Hey, what's up? Welcome to the Mandatory. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. It helps the channel grow. Also, you can find us on the audio side. We just did a special segment where you can only hear it on the audio side. We talk about if Michaela Mayer got robbed this past weekend. But remember, when you hit that audio side, wherever you find your podcast or shows, make sure to leave a rate and review. And thank you so much for rocking with us. Also, follow us at the Mandatory TKO. We're everywhere: TikTok, Twitter, and IG. Lots to get into in this episode. Also, we're going to have a special betting preview for Jaime Munguia and John Ryder for everyone that's been waiting for that one. Um, but you know what, Bryan? Lots of fights have been announced. We're not going to be able to get to all of them, but we're going to talk about three that are pretty much official at this point. And one of them is going to be crazy because Tszyu-Keith Thurman is back for the first time since 2022. And this is going to be a crazy fight that goes down March 30th in Las Vegas. Bryan, your thoughts on Keith Thurman returning against Tszyu?
We haven't seen Keith Thurman since February of 2022. And that was a decision win against Mario Barrios, which that feels so long ago. Before that, we hadn't seen him in 2.5 years, which was the split decision loss to Manny Pacquiao, which I actually
He
thought he looked good in, right?
he
Like
got dropped in that fight.
he
Keith Thurman
did.
got dropped in that fight. I remember I had my money on Thurman to win that fight. And I remember I saw him get dropped, and I was like, I don't know how that's going to go. Split decision, though. Keith Thurman has dealt with a ton of injuries. And that's why we've seen these long chunk layoffs, but we've been waiting for him to return to the ring. He's moving up to 154 pounds for this fight. And Bryan, it kind of makes me wonder, does Terrence Bud Crawford get the winner of this fight?
That's interesting. I'm very worried about this fight for Keith Thurman. Very worried. He's in his mid 30s. He's had the long layoffs, the injuries. Tim Tszyu is somebody who's like heading towards peak Tim Tszyu. Like I don't feel like we've seen the best of him yet. I'm a believer that he's that good. I think at 154 he can clearly compete against and potentially beat anybody in this weight class. This is not a very deep weight class, in my opinion, which is another reason why Keith Thurman gets his shot despite the long layoff. Like, I have questions about why that is in terms of like a ranking standpoint. Somebody who's never fought in the weight class, but boxing is gonna boxing. And at the same time, like if you're gonna sell the first PBC on Amazon pay-per-view reportedly, yeah, you're probably gonna want a name like Keith Thurman in there, who's somebody we've had in our sort of consciousness for almost 10 years at this point, in terms of like him being a champion level fighter, contender level fighter for that long. Maybe even, yeah, 10 years. So I think that he's going to lose this fight. I think Tim Tszyu's
Yeah.
going to beat him. It just is what it is. Like Tim Tszyu, who's a little bit older than I thought. Actually, he's 29 years old, but still, I think he's at his peak right now. He had a good showing against Bryan Mendoza, which was a very fun, competitive fight that I think Bryan Mendoza actually got rounds off of him. But his last fight was in October. Keith Thurman's was 18 months before
2022.
that, 20 months before that, whatever the math is there. So we saw Tim Tszyu win 3 times last year. Tim Tszyu has actually fought 4 times since Keith Thurman lasted. Like, there's just no way I'm backing Keith Thurman in this fight, but I think it's going to be a great fight nonetheless. I just worry about the ring rust and the age and the inactivity and the injuries for Keith Thurman all catching up to him.
I think I'm most worried about the layoff, the injuries. I think Keith Thurman, he's been waiting to get into the ring. He's been waiting for an opportunity, and I think he's been waiting for a money fight as well, because I think this will bring in some dollars for a guy like Keith Thurman. And you talked about it. He's kind of been in the back of our minds for about 10 years now. Keith Thurman is a name one time, right? This is a guy that potentially was growing to be that superstar. But then injuries got in the way. Manny Pacquiao dropped him. He lost a split decision. And then we were like, what's going on with Keith Thurman? He kind of disappeared for a little bit, came back, fought Mario Barrios, and then we didn't hear from him. And now he's back taking on Tim Tszyu. And Tim Tszyu right now is on an incline. Right, everyone is pushing Tim Tszyu really hard. Really big fan base in Australia. You know, when Australia starts to push you like that, you're gonna become a superstar. And so that's what's going down for Tim Tszyu, and he's the best name at 154 pounds right now. I'd probably say He's that name at 154 pounds. Until Bud comes into that division, until maybe Spence does. We don't know what's going on with Spence after he just also had eye surgery again. But this is probably the best fight for Keith Thurman. And there's other names at 154 pounds where I'm looking like, where's that Danny Garcia? You know what I mean? When are we going to see names like that? But I'm not mad at Keith Thurman for taking this fight. And I do believe if Bud does come up a weight class, that we're more likely to see him fight the winner of this fight than see him fight a guy like Teofimo Lopez, which, by the way, we also did do a segment on, so you can find that on our YouTube page. But yeah, I think this is a fight that Keith Thurman loses. And it just comes down to him being inactive. He hasn't been active in a long time. Tim Tszyu, the way that he fights, he likes to come forward. He's aggressive. He looks big. And I don't know how Keith Thurman is going to look after a long layoff moving up a weight class. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I'm not just counting out Keith Thurman because he is one time. I mean, they don't call him one time for no reason, but this is a great fight. I'm excited for it. And there's also a co-main event that just got announced by Mike Coppinger. Now, there's going to be a little bit of confusion because you might have saw Ryan Garcia post that he was going to fight Rolly Romero. Well, that's going to be put to bed right now because Mike Coppinger reported that Rolly Romero will be defending his 140-pound title against Isaac Pitbull Cruz on the co-main event for Tim Tszyu-Keith Thurman, March 30th in Las Vegas. So this is actually going down. We're not getting Ryan Garcia and Rolly Romero, clearly. No way. They had a tentative date. I believe it was April 20th. So there's no way that fight would happen. This is going down March 30th, the co-main. Before you get into this fight, Bryan, are you kind of disappointed that Ryan Garcia and Rolly weren't able to make it happen, despite the fact that there was a report it was going to happen? There was a report that Rolly took himself out of the conversations because of the money. Then there was a report that it wasn't going to happen at all. And then Ryan came back and said, yo, it's happening for sure. Less than 24 hours later, Rolly's fighting Isaac Cruz. So
Yeah.
are you like, that's crazy, but are you kind of disappointed that we're not getting Rolly and Ryan? Because, that's kind of that's a watch party fight.
I don't know why all of Tank's exes want to fight each other at this point. But it is what it is. Isaac Cruz, I mean, I think he's gonna beat Rolly Romero, despite how he looked at his last fight. I mean, Gio Cabrera's a tough matchup. So I get why that fight went the way it did. To me, like this is a more interesting fight in terms of like how's Rolly Romero going to deal with this. But I think Rolly Romero is going to be the underdog regardless of if he fought Ryan Garcia or Isaac Cruz. I think I'm going to, look at whoever he's fighting to beat him because Rolly Romero lost that fight or was losing that fight to Ismael Barroso, who then got a first round knockout over O'Hara Davies and is still lurking around here somewhere. You know what? Ryan Garcia, you should fight him. I would want to see Ryan Garcia actually fight Ismael Barroso next. If he's not going to fight Jose Ramirez, if he's not going to fight Arnold Barbosa, he already outright publicly rejected the Jose Ramirez fight. And evidently, he doesn't call the shots on his own career because he and Oscar De La Hoya can't get on the damn same page about anything. And he's out here saying that he's going to fight Rolly Romero on April 20th. And then Rolly Romero gets on this card, probably more money, if I'm being honest. This may be not a more lucrative fight in terms of fighting Isaac Cruz versus Ryan Garcia, but this is the first PBC on Amazon event, so this is probably a bigger deal to be a part of. Though I think this is clearly the more dangerous title defense, but Rolly Romero's delusional and probably thinks that he's going to win against either of these guys, and yeah, like he should. He's a boxer, but and he is skilled. Like he was doing some great things up until Gervonta Davis knocked him out, but he also got outboxed by a 40-year-old until we saw one of the worst stoppages in many years of boxing. So I think this is a very interesting fight. It's a great co-feature on paper. Like it's a captivating co-feature.
Yeah.
Could have
been a main event.
Yeah, Arislandi Lara got announced, and I think he's going to be on this card as well, but not announced, reported. And I think he's going to be on this card as well.
Could you imagine if it's him and Danny Garcia?
Yeah, it wasn't from what I saw. I think it was I have to look. I have to look again because I saw it last night. It was him and it was Michael Zarafa.
Okay.
And we'll face each other March 30th, Las Vegas, as part of the Tim Tszyu-Keith Thurman undercard, PBC's inaugural show, Amazon Prime. And this is reported by, I'm not even sure who did this first, but that's something that reportedly is set. So we'll see. Erislandy Lara back from the dead. We haven't seen him in a very long time. Also, he was supposed to fight Danny Garcia last year at Barclays Center in July and then October and whatever, and didn't happen. Regardless, I think this is a great co-feature, and I think Isaac Cruz is going to knock out Rolly Romero.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really good fight. You know, going back to that Ishmael Barroso fight with Rolly Romero, do you think he just didn't take him seriously because he was thinking, yo, this is a 40-year-old. I'm going to knock him out. Like, Rolly could have came into that fight and maybe not taken it seriously, because I was actually impressed with him in the first few rounds against Tank. I had him up on the scorecards, of course, and then he made a mistake being a little bit, not too defensive against a guy like Tank, and you know how good Tank is. Tank ended up getting the knockout, but for Rolly Romero, I think this is a tough fight. I think at the same time, I think Isaac Pitbull Cruz, I mean, they don't call him Pitbull Cruz for no reason, but I do believe he's going to be able to win this fight. As for Rolly Romero, though, if he ends up beating Isaac Cruz, then we're talking about Rolly in a different way, because that's a legit name on his resume. And so this is a lot riding on this fight for Rolly Romero. And let's keep it real here. If Rolly Romero beats Pitbull Cruz, then I would kind of say that he has a little bit of a better resume than Ryan Garcia, to be honest with you, because that's a good name. And then it kind of makes the fight with him and Ryan Garcia, if it was to happen, a little bit bigger. Right?
The odds would be different. And look, Ryan Garcia's best win is against Oscar Duarte, who we just saw. Maybe Javier Fortuna. Like, Isaac Cruz would be a much bigger win than anything Ryan Garcia has done to date, if Rolly Romero would have pulled this off. I'm not sure he will.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure, but you know what? We can't count out Rolly. These are two guys that definitely possess power. And what I've seen from Rolly when he's serious, like, he's a pretty good fighter for a guy that started pretty late in his career. I think I would lean towards Isaac Cruz in this for now, but I really want to see how serious Rolly takes this, because if Rolly does take it seriously and he ends up getting this victory, he's going to end up making a lot of bread that could potentially lead to a mega fight between him and Ryan Garcia, because Ryan Garcia thought this was going to go down. I'm pretty sure he's going to wake up this morning and be like, what? This is not happening. But it's one of those fights that I'm looking forward to. I think it's a great co-main. Like I said, I think this could be a main event on another card as well. But this is great for the first pay-per-view on Amazon. I'm really interested in seeing what PBC does with this. But Tszyu-Keith Thurman, then we're going to get Rolly Romero, and of course, none other than Isaac Pitbull Cruz. I think this is going to be great for boxing. March 30th. Give it to me now. That's like just over 2 months away. So we already